Well, good evening, everyone. Whoa, we've got an interactive group tonight. This is fantastic. I'm Lee Learman, the Dean of Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this warm evening, at least inside the auditorium here. It's warm in the medical school. How many of you have not been here before in our space at the medical school? Wonderful. I did see some new faces out at the reception, and we want to welcome you into our space here. Our school opened its doors in 2010, and from the very beginning, included art as a major focus several times a year in art shows that we would engage with members of the community. And so we welcome all of you for whom this is your first time to kind of keep an eye on some feed from us that will help you understand when there are other art shows coming here. This is a very significant engagement, and you'll hear why in a moment. But in general, if you're interested in any of that, Courtney Powell here is our lead person for that. So please let her know. So this is officially, we are the Roanoke Innovation Corridor Partners. I love it. There's no LLC, there's no 501c3, but that's who we are. And the medical school is proud to be one of the folks sponsoring this event, which came out of a wonderful convergence of interest and opportunity. So we recently, and to make space, to create spaces here in the Riverside campus to grow a little bit, we decided to move some of our offices for the medical school out to a new building we were leasing at 1316 Jefferson. So we moved into that space at the end of the summer. And the parking lot was refreshed, and inside the building, it was used to be a pain clinic and had to be renovated in some ways. But we realized that there was an opportunity to take this Walnut Bridge ramp, which is right there abutting the parking lot of the building that we're in, and do something with it that would be artistic and would maybe elevate the space a little bit as it marks sort of the beginning of a footprint that extends, beyond that into this innovation corridor. So we took our interesting idea through the great efforts of our Vice Dean, Rebecca Pauley, our Community Engagement Director, Courtney Powell, and our Facilities Director, Brian Stanford, brought that to the attention of Doug and folks at the city and realized that they had been already thinking about this for a while. And because it wasn't going to the bottom of a long list, because it was already on a list of things that had been evaluated. This is my revisionist history. It probably isn't true. We were able to expedite the process that would get us to this moment here, which is where we can invite a wonderful artist who works wonders with light to transform spaces with Bill FitzGibbons here. What an amazing opportunity to engage his vision and expertise to take a look at this canvas called our parking lot and the bridge and all that, and really think about what can we do to create a more welcoming feeling in that space, and maybe one that's maybe historic as well in terms of marking where we are in our evolution as an innovation corridor. So it's very exciting to be here. If you aren't familiar with Bill's work, it's really amazing. He's been working all around the world to bring art into spaces that may just be beautiful already, and they can be elevated further through the art, but also spaces that could be a little scary. Dark spaces that can be illuminated, right? Those that don't seem to have any people not sure what's going on over there, instead expressing what our vision is for that space. So we're very excited to be working with our colleagues at the city and the arts community in Roanoke to really receive your wonderful feedback today through this engagement with the artist in residence, at least for a couple of days here in residence. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce or turn it over to Doug Jackson from the city of Roanoke. Again, welcome.
Wow, I love it. You can feel an origin story starting to build, and that is how we're thinking about it. And I tell you, this room is something special has happened in this room before. Then lots of special things happen here, no doubt. But I can remember being here in 2013 when we did a summit. We had done an arts and cultural plan, and the arts and cultural plan, we said we really need to focus on the sustainability of the arts and cultural sector in Roanoke. And we had 150 people here all afternoon on an October day. And as a result of that, we now have the Roanoke Cultural Endowment. We had a guest come in from St. Louis to talk about their model. And the people in the room said, okay, well, we can put our heads together and make this happen. And now, Shalene Powell, raise your hand. Sh Sh Shalene supports the board of the Roanoke Cultural Endowment. That's a public-private partnership. And they are how far along? 8.4 million toward a $20 million endowment that provide operating funds in perpetuity for our arts and cultural organizations. And they're a partner with us here today. And when we said, hey, let's meet in this room, I feel like we can look back, 12 years at something we built together. And tonight, hopefully we're looking forward and saying, okay, what's another big thing we're going to build in our community? Because it is such a special community with so many talented partners. And when we all work together in concert, we do some pretty spectacular things. We're working in concert in the arts and cultural sector. And we have a tagline, it's here, Roanoke. And you just saw the video that put out a couple of years ago, a project led by the endowment. But our tagline is that we are creating every day the place we want to be. Creativity, creating every day the place we want to be. And that's, I'm here representing the city of Roanoke in a way, and a lot of what we do is lessening the distance between people and their government. I mean, Roanoke is us, and we really have the capacity to do these things. The Roanoke Cultural Endowment, supports the 24 organizations, arts and cultural organizations. The city of Roanoke gives grants to these organizations. That's one aspect of the arts sector, and it's a really important one. But we've got so many more aspects of the arts sector. You think about the individual artist. Okay, I better see every hand raised here. Raise your hand if you are creating something and you're creative and you are making things every day. Look at all these hands. That's the energy that we want to tap, and we want everybody in our community to tap. And it happens in the arts sector. It happens with our partners in neighborhoods. It happens with community development organizations. It happens along the innovation corridor every day. And as we see it with this larger ecosystem view, we're able to do even more. And so the Roanoke Arts Commission is just a coordinating group, and they've got their eye on this and hoping to, we've got 15 volunteer appointed members appointed by city council. They're working really hard. They've got 4 committees and they're very active on it. And today we had the chair, Ben Bazak, the chair of the placemaking committee, here very focused on this project with us. And they're just, I tell you, if you get a chance to be on the Roanoke Arts Commission, do it. It's how I decided to stick around and love Roanoke, serving on it when I joined in 2006. But the way the Arts Commission, we have city resources. We've got percent for art dollars, and those are to go into public projects. But it's not just those 15 people deciding what projects to do. We're doing it together with neighbors. We're having a very slow development process. We're having conversations. Artists are bringing us ideas. Neighborhoods are bringing us ideas. Dean Pauly's coming saying, "Hey, well, what about this underpass?" That's the way we want it to happen. And hopefully, you see us all over the community, but you're not seeing us. You're seeing projects that we're supporting. Now, there's a Wi-Fi here, and it's VT Open Wi-Fi, but your cell phone probably works too. But we're going to do a Menti poll a little bit later, because we do want to get your impressions and your thoughts on this potential project as we develop this together. So it's okay to have your phone out. In other words. All right. Did anybody drive through the underpass when you came here today on South Jefferson? Has anybody walked it this year? Has anybody biked it? Excellent. Has anybody gotten on the trolley at the trolley stop under there? All right. Yeah. There's a lot of activity happening under there. And just to make sure we're all grounded in it, Yeah, we've got downtown Roanoke there at the north, at the north. Then we've got the South Jefferson corridor leading to all these amazing investments happening here in research and medical care. Um, and it leads to South Roanoke. It's adjacent to the Old Southwest Historic Neighborhood. It's a gateway into Southeast Roanoke. If you are driving along the parkway and you see a sign that says, "Hey, why don't you check out Roanoke," to the right or to the left, depending on which direction you're going. If you see a sign, "Hey, go to check out Roanoke," you might come into town that way and come right through this underpass. So our question tonight, which we sold when we asked you to come, is what could turn an underpass into a wonder pass? And it is that wonder, that curiosity. I have had so many different emotions today as we've been riding around with Bill FitzGibbons. And they range from overwhelmed to how on earth do we do this? Am I up for this task? And then we had 6 people in the car, and every time I'd start to ask that question, I just I'd laugh because it's not about like what I know how to do, because I don't know how to do a lot. I don't know how to do much. I don't know how. Yeah, there's a lot that I don't know how to do, but we can figure it out together. And today, when we were riding, and we had Bill FitzGibbons, who has such a generous, really thoughtful nature. He is so respected across the country. He's building on a career as a leading artist in the country. He's worked all over the world. He has, the Texas legislature named him the state artist. In 2012, he was the official state artist in the state of Texas, which I think that's just kind of cool in itself. He's very active in the International Sculpture Center and started the Texas cohort of that. He's won a Coda Works Award, which is for commissioned art in the country. It's a big deal. But not only that, he is an industry leader. He's a network builder, and he's a community builder. And the questions he asked us when we got on the phone made me say, wow, I think this is really the right artist for this job, and he can really help us. So as we were riding along today, those feelings were, those butterflies in the belly quickly became excitement and curiosity. Oh, how would we do this? If we could do this, what would it look like? And with that, we want to ask Bill to come up and give us a little talk and learn more about his work. Then we're going to have some opportunity to ask him questions. And then I've got a few focus questions for you to get some input. Does that sound good? All right. And for that, please, Bill.
Well, I want to thank Dean Lehrman for letting us have this here. And of course, Doug, I think I'd like to hire you for my PR person. So what I'm going to do this evening is kind of go through how I got to where I am now with some of my first light installations. And let's see if this is working. This is when I was still in graduate school, and I started using neon in a lot of my sculptural projects. And this is a set that I designed for a contemporary dance group, and it was performed at the St. Louis Art Museum. And this particular installation is in Stoke-on-Trent in England, and I had a solo show which was in one room that was about 10 by 15 feet. And so I filled that up, and then he said, "Oh yeah, by the way, we want you to do something in the atrium." And I said, "I don't have anything." And they said, "Well, you come up with something." And Stoke-on-Trent is the brick making capital of the United Kingdom. And so I went up to the director of the museum and I said, do you know anybody that has a brick factory? And they said, oh, one of my board members. I said, well, could you introduce me to him? Because in Stoke-on-Trent, the homes have what they call a mews, which is a kind of a brick wall U behind their house. And at night, the kilns from the brick making have this glow that goes up in the evening. And so I found a neon maker who made these pieces for me. He stayed up all night to do these. And so I built this U-shaped form, and I had this neon coming out of the center with the reflection. And the newspaper picked up on this as a piece inspired by the large kilns in Stoke-on-Trent. And I was very, very lucky to escape not having something. This is when I was in graduate school, this was a neon piece that I wanted to kind of neon was in signs all over the place. But I wanted to do something that liberated itself from signs. In fact, liberated it to the point that I wanted to float it in the sky. And so I got these weather balloons and I made this aluminum cage. And instead of having a rope holding this, I had electric wire that went up to the artwork. And we floated it over the West End in St. Louis. And I would say in 15, 20 minutes after this went up, I had 3 police cars pull up because they had gotten so many UFO calls. Yeah. And I told the officer, I said, well, you want me to take it down? He said, no, this is cool. Keep it up. So that was my only sky art piece with neon. And then after I left St. Louis, first off, when I first got out of graduate school, I became the curator at Longmire Sculpture Park for 3 years. And a friend of mine from England had introduced, well, a fellow student when I was in graduate school was from London. And when I started using light and electronic stuff, he introduced me to his friend Ken Gray in London, who is doing what he called electro sculpture. And he's the one that invited me to have a show with him in Birmingham. And then I ended up having several shows in Sunderland and Stoke-on-Trent and places. And so what I wanted to do was get more involved in the public art let me back up. So I forgot the exact date, but when the UK went into a big recession back in the 80s, Ken called me up and said, Bill, if there's any job teaching in the United States, could you please let me know? I got to get out of here. We're going broke. And so I'm originally from Memphis, and the Memphis College of Art asked me to take over a sabbatical for the sculpture teacher. And I said, no, I can't do it, but I have a great artist that could. They said, oh, what's his name? I said, Ken Gray. He said, where does he live? In London. Oh, no. This is only for a year. He won't want to do it. I said, he will do it. So he came over. He just transformed the sculpture program for that 1 year. And when he had to step down, the Memphis University hired him as adjunct faculty. And then he eventually went to the College Art Association and got to be the head of sculpture at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. After he was there for a year, he called me and said, look, there's this contemporary art center here by the name of the Visual Arts Center of Alaska, and we have to hire a new sculpture head. And he said, I'm on the board and we want you to come up here. I said, Ken, I've been trying to go to New York for 6 years. Alaska? Are you kidding me? And I said, but I would love for you to fly me up there and interview me because I want to see Alaska. Flew up there, fell in love with it. It was just magnificent. I mean, in fact, Roanoke reminds me a bit of Anchorage because of the mountains around. But anyway, I went up there, and you have to understand Alaska is, if you took four Texas and put them together, they'd still be smaller than the state of Alaska. And in that subcontinent, there's only 500,000 people. And all the cities, Anchorage, Fairbanks, Juneau, all have public art programs. The state of Alaska has a public art program, and the state of Alaska was making a killing with the pipeline. They were getting so much money that they were building facilities. There's 220,000 people in Anchorage. When they built a performing arts center or a convention center, they built it for 500,000 people because they knew that the oil was going to disappear someday. And so every one of these projects had 1% attached to it. 500,000 people, 5 artists in the whole state that did public art. So I got public art in Fairbanks and Anchorage and Juneau. And what it did was it opened my eyes to the difference between gallery art and just museum art and actual public art, where you're going out and influencing whole communities. You can do placemaking work. You can bring civic pride to a neighborhood. You know, you look across the United States, how many neighborhoods look the same with the same houses and the same McDonald's and this, that, and the other thing. But when there is a unique, important piece of art in a community or a neighborhood, that makes it unique and brings civic pride to that neighborhood. And so, anyway, going back to these are some of the neon pieces that I did in Anchorage. This was at a downtown. It was a big shopping center and parking garage, and at the top you can see I have a sort of an Art Deco architectural symbol, and then it's reflected down onto into the sidewalk with a slope of concrete, and then there's that tempered glass on top of the neon, and it was called Reflections of Fifth Avenue. And then I was commissioned in Rhode Island. They had a new parking garage as part of the convention center, and they wanted a piece that's facing the interstate, and I wanted to do a light piece all the way across the top of the parking garage. And this is I think it's Interstate 95. It's one of the most used. It goes all the way down south in the country, and it had some interesting responses from this because there were some people that just really loved it, and there were some people who are trying to figure out what the hell is that saying. In fact, let me show you a cartoon in the local newspaper. There's a couple sleeping, and he said, "I bet he's thinking about women." And he says, "What do those symbols on the side of the parking garage mean?" So it can generate some discussions in your community. This is at the International Arrivals Terminal in Houston at Bush Intercontinental Airport. And I was selected with 3 other artists to do pieces at this terminal, and I was going to do a neon piece. And this was actually the first LED piece I did. And there's a representative from Color Kinetics that was at one of our meetings, and he started to walk over to me to talk to me, and he fake tripped, and he had a light fixture in his hand, and it fell on a tile floor. And I said, "Oh my God, this is going to be shattered." And he said, "Oh no." He picked it up. And he says, "That's no problem. It's shatterproof." And I went, "Oh my God, that's what the two big problems with neon." Okay, limited colors, about maybe 20, 22 colors. But when you get that color, it's always there for the rest of its life. Problem number two, it breaks real easy. You cannot put neon on an underpass. It will shatter from the vibrations. So anyway, he said, this is a new light system and you might consider this. I said, well, how many colors can it do? He said, oh, we're limited. I said, oh, limited to what? He said, 2 million colors. I said, okay, I think you sold me. And so this was my first LED piece. When you at the international arrivals, you have to go down this escalator to get to the baggage and checkout, and you see this sculpture on the outside, and this is called Skywall. The next piece I'm going to show you is at the San Antonio International Airport, and I was on the design team with an architectural firm that was doing this parking garage, and I wanted to do a large scale piece, but my budget wasn't that big, and so next door to the airport was a company called D. Howard, and they would take business jets or even some commercial jets and redo the interiors, especially for very wealthy people that had their own jets. And they had a Bach 1011 airliner that they started to replace they took out the interior, and long story short, there was a lawsuit that got involved with this particular aircraft, and so they settled the lawsuit, and they just had this plane that was now junk. The motors were gone, the inside, the interior was gone. And so I went over there and asked them what they were going to do with it. And they said, we don't know. I said, well, can I have it for an artwork? And they said, sure. Okay. And I said, oh, great. And I thought they'd help me cut the wings off. And they said, no, we're not helping you do anything. You do it yourself. I go, oh, okay. Let me see. I need to cut the wings off a jet airliner. So I don't know if you know this, but the fuel is in the wings of a jet airliner. And they told me that the fuel had all been taken out. And I said, okay. And we had a oxyacetylene torch, and we were going to start cutting it. And I said, wait a minute, before we do this, let's just open this one panel and take a look at the inside of the wing. And there's like 100 bolts on this thing. We finally opened it up, and the inside of the wings had like aluminum U channels that were supports in there. And yes, they had emptied the most of the fuel out, but inside each of those U forms was fuel. So if I had hit that with an oxyacetylene torch, I would not be here speaking with you today. So we had to unbolt this, and it took us 2 weeks with a crew of 3 people to unbolt it. And then fortunately, one of my son's buddies' father was in the Texas Highway Patrol, and he did between the airport and my studio, he escorted it down to the south side of San Antonio. Anyway, so this is an entry now to, and here's the plane. this is us getting ready to take it apart. So it was a bit of a challenge. And, it's what really upset me though was the cab. I was going to turn the cab into part of our house to have it go out from the house and have it as an outdoor, you know, eating place. And it got stolen by somebody who took it to the scrapyard. But anyway, and here it is with the different color system. And the first underpass I did was in San Antonio. And San Antonio has a historic neighborhood called St. Paul's, which is on the west side of the interstate. I'm sorry, the east side of the interstate. On the west side is a convention center, which is next to. Uh-oh. Hello, hello, okay. Uh, and the Riverwalk is there. And people, there's several hotels in St. Paul Square, and people that were there for conventions would go to the convention center, and then after that, they would usually go down to the Riverwalk because everybody that never goes to San Antonio wants to go to the Riverwalk. Often they would get overserved and walk back home through this underpass that I'm going to show you. And there were quite a few pedestrian mishaps with cars, people walking and stupidly through there. And so they also had vagrants that were starting to hang out there, which also prevented people that were downtown at one of the downtown hotels to walk to St. Paul Square because they didn't want to go through there. So they approached, the business association approached the city of San Antonio to do a public art piece that would light it up. And they also wanted to help with it financially. And so between the Bexar County, the county at the time had a very good head of the county who was very pro public art, matched what the city gave, and then the businessman gave to this as well. So it was a nice collaboration of community groups in both county and city. And this was the piece. And if you can see the front part, there's a sculptural piece, and I had several sculptures there that were also internally lit. And this was called Light Channels. And you can see this is looking west, and that's one of the big hotels for the conference center, the Marriott. And it was very interesting because being the first one I'd ever done, I didn't know how it was going to be received in the community. And I had the surprise of I had people that had bands they do videotapes of themselves playing in the underpass. I had Porsche did advertisements for their cars under there. It was just, I'm going, holy smokes. This is something I have to pursue. All right. And so here is another, this is a transit center. Via Metropolitan is our bus company in San Antonio, and they wanted to build a transit center downtown. And excuse me, they wanted to have an artist with the architectural design team, which was Perkins Eastman from New York City, and they looked at me and they said, "Look, whatever you want to do, we want to have a wayfinding device because this is a part of San Antonio that's kind of run down a bit, and there's some vacant buildings, and people really don't know that neighborhood. So they want something that you can see from downtown office buildings and from the downtown expressway. So it had to be at least 80 feet tall. And this has 10 different programs throughout the year. But I also wanted to have something for the pedestrians that maybe had to wait 20 or 30 minutes for their bus changes. So at the bottom, there is a interactive LED window. And here you can see, that's actually my granddaughter interacting with this piece. And it's been great to see elderly people in wheelchairs going up to it, little kids doing it. It becomes just a way to get pedestrians involved in something that's really meant to bring people from downtown over to the transit center. This piece is the City Hall in Reykjavik, Iceland, and it was for their museum night, and museum night is one day out of the year in Reykjavik where they keep the museums all open till midnight, and it's in the middle of February, and Reykjavik is about the same latitude as Anchorage. So when I found out that there was a pond around where the columns came out, which is not actually the entrance is on the other side, I figured, well, okay, it will be frozen and we can go there and we can just place the fixtures on the ice. It's only for one night, and then go to the bar. Well, it's a thermal lake. And so not only did we have to get in there with waiters, but we had to, and these columns aren't regular round columns, they're kind of these oval. And we had to come up with a system pretty much overnight of attaching some sort of a shelf for the lights to be on it. And the way they contacted me was there's a Steinar Thorinsdottir is a friend of mine, a sculptor, and I had her, I curate shows sometimes for the Botanical Garden in San Antonio, and I had her over with her. She has these great human kind of figures that we placed around the pond in the Botanical Center. And she showed the images of the Alamo to the mayor, and the mayor said, well, let's do that for our city hall. So that's how that happened. And this is, we have this event called Luminaria, which is once a year in San Antonio. And the Mayor Hardberger is the one who started this 8 years ago, and I was I was asked to be on the committee that would put together the first Luminaria, and I was at one of the meetings, and they said, "Okay, you can do it." I said, "I can do what?" "You can light the Alamo." "Oh, how much money do you have for artists?" $250. I said, okay, let me see if I can work that out. I needed 30 fixtures. That was $30,000 of fixtures, okay? So I called up Color Kinetics, who I'd been dealing with for a few years, and I said, how would you like the Alamo on your website lit with your fixtures? "Oh my God, can you do that?" "Yes, I can do that." And they said, "And what's the bad news?" "I don't have any money." And so they said, "Okay, we'll lend you the fixtures," because I told them it was temporary. "We'll lend you the fixtures, and then we'll tell you how to ship it back to us." So I got the fixtures back. No, I got the fixtures and lit it up, and we had the San Antonio Symphony play in front of it. And then we took it down the next day. And the first week went by, the second week went by, the third week went by, And I hadn't heard back from Color Kinetics. And I called them back. I said, "You're going to tell me how to ship these back." They said, "Oh, we've updated that fixture. You can keep those." Those fixtures then lit the San Fernando Cathedral in San Antonio, the University of Tennessee's museum, the couple other events, and the Reykjavik, and my Christmas lights on my house. Now, the interesting thing was the Alamo was shown live in Times Square, and which just totally shocked me. There's a company in San Antonio that does billboards around the nation, and they were able to hook up a camera to this thing happening. And this was that, I don't know if on Thanksgiving you saw the Thanksgiving parade in Times Square, and they have this big screen there. And it was on that screen, and they had a text about what was going on top. I said, wow, how much would that cost to do that kind of publicity? So anyway, this is in Birmingham, Alabama, and they had heard about the piece I did in San Antonio, and I've mentioned to some of you about this. They they had a nonprofit start in the year 2000 called Rev Birmingham to revitalize downtown because so many people moved out back in the 70s and early 80s. And there's a elevated railroad that goes right through the center of Birmingham. And the Rev Birmingham built on one side, the south side of the railroad track, a new baseball stadium. And next to the baseball stadium, they built a new park called Railroad Park. And they had a nice pond, they had a walking path, they had a stage for bands, they had a food truck court. And on the other side of the railroad track, they had a couple of warehouses that were turned into high-end condominiums. The people in those condominiums would drive one block to the theater so they didn't have to go through the underpass because drug dealers and all kinds of nefarious people were there. So they wanted to brighten it up and make it into something that would chase those people out. And so, and this was built in 1931, and it was we repainted the inside of the underpass. At that time, I was doing white because it's good reflection. I usually use light blue now, and we had an incredible opening. We had something like 4,000 people came to the opening of this particular underpass. I mean, it was just astonishing to me, the response of the public to this artwork. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of photographs on the internet of people getting their pictures taken there, whether it's family shots like this. And what really amazed me was people are getting their wedding photographs taken in an underpass that used to be scary with drug dealers. Now, that is the power of public art. And that's what brings pride to communities. So those people that try to bash public art by saying it's a waste of money, we need to fill the potholes, they don't understand the positive effects economically for a community through public art, not to mention the neighborhood pride, the community pride. I mean, I probably have 100 of these photos. And Wall Street Journal picked up on it and advertised it. And this is I was on a master plan for the El Paso airport for doing updated lighting. And El Paso is right on the border with Mexico, and they have a wonderful Mexican culture in El Paso, just like San Antonio. And so I wanted to uh, celebrate some of the Mexican celebrations like Cinco de Mayo, and I I have the Mexican flag uh, for those special days for Mexican holidays and things. And this is an interesting economic story also. This is a downtown office building that was kind of invisible with these other buildings around it, and they had a pretty low occupancy rate. And so they thought if they had a light sculpture on the exterior, it might help get noticed. And you can see all the buildings around it. And then after this was installed, they got about 10% more people coming into the building, just because we didn't know this building was there, even though it's a 25-story building. So that is the end. Thank you. Anybody want to do questions? Hmm? I, well, that's part of the reason we're here. We want the community to know about these possibilities, and they're trying to put together an agenda to get some source. If we can separate out, like the electrical contractor could maybe be picked up by the city. The painting could be maybe like to keep the budget down for the artwork itself. And also, there's a lot of paperwork, let's say, dealing with the Department of Transportation. That's probably a 6 to 8 month process of getting all the red tape stuff done. But this is the group that can help make it happen, advocating for it, because, there's nothing like the public support for public art.
All the pictures were at night on the light visible during almost all the pictures showed the installations at night.
Right.
Are the installations visible during the day?
No, the color lights do not do not work very well during the daytime. That's why I like to paint the columns and the headers a light blue color, which is kind of a sky color. So when you go through there, it's not just the old concrete deal. And the lights can go to white. And so you still have all the dark spaces lit up during the daytime, because when we were there today during the daytime, there were some kind of scary looking places there, dark wise. So.
Hi, thank you for that. I'm wondering, who are your colorist influences as far as artists? And are you familiar with Carlos Cruz Diaz, who was a colorist? He did work in Miami in the Wynwood section.
Carlos who?
Cruz Diaz.
It was familiar, but yeah.
Who influences you?
Well, like I've told several people earlier, the the choice of which fixture to use, what location to put the fixture, is the canvas, okay? The unique programs that I do is the paint on that canvas. And I come up with my programs by working with neighborhood and business associations and finding out what annual events are important to that community. Like in San Antonio, for example, Fiesta in April is a major festival. And so we have a very multicolor, very fast changing program for just that month. And and so by working with the community in that way, they have input. And so they are part of that piece. And that's very important to me. The same reason why in a lot of my sculptures, like at the fire station in Anchorage and at the airport here where the wings are, I went to some of the employee meetings and said that I'm going to put a time capsule in the base of this artwork. And anybody who works here can put whatever you want in a 12 by 18-inch envelope, and it will be opened in 50 years from now. And so by doing that, part of them is in the artwork, and they become much more supportive. That's especially happened in Anchorage at the fire station, because the first meeting I went to, and I didn't show that piece, but the first meeting I went to with them, there was a couple of them that said, we need new uniforms and a couple more hoses, and we're going to spend it on this crappy new art stuff. And I said, well, let me ask you this. What are the two most difficult things about being a fireman? And they said, well, one is we get to a fire 5 minutes too late and somebody has perished. Number two, one of our brothers has perished in a fire. And then we have to come back to the fire station. So I said, okay, let's think about that. What if I did kind of a meditative garden where, because this fire station was facing one of the main interstates that went into downtown Anchorage, but they had a wall, a U-shaped wall in front of it, and they had one or two little plants in there. And they said, oh, okay. And so I designed it I had these columns, and one of the things that impressed me most about living in Anchorage was the fact that we had 21 hours of sunlight in the summer and 4 hours in the winter. And so the sun became very important, and I did some sundial kind of insulations also. But this was two columns with a design on the top that had this open circle, and on the back wall behind this artwork was a circular sun that was painted yellow with some orange on it. And as you drove by the artwork, at one point, the circle totally eclipsed the circle, and then it comes back out. So anyway, they became such advocates that I was running low on money on this, and I needed $5,000 more. And the firemen went to the city and said, this is our headquarters, give them the damn money. And the city said, okay, yeah, no problem. So yeah, it's important for input from the community. It's important to recognize, what's special about, the Strawberry Festival here, as an example. You have all kinds of special events here throughout the year that would be highlighted with some of these programs.
Hi, have you had any issues with vandalism, or do you have to think about where to properly place the lights to prevent vandalism?
Well, of course, you don't mount the lights on the ground you mount them up going down. And so I haven't had any vandalism with that. Now, there has been graffiti tagging on some of the columns, and you just have to go and get those repainted. But that's the only vandalism, and I can't stand all this tagging that takes place. You no, not really, but I've never done anything less than about 12 feet. So,
When you're doing the like overpass projects specifically, have any of the governments you've worked with also implemented other infrastructure changes in conjunction with what you've done? I could see for the Walnut overpass in particular, since it's an extension of the Mill Mountain Greenway that wraps around Williamson to Walnut. A lot of people ride bikes there, walk there all throughout the day and into the evening. Like that could be a really cool way to pair pavement, sidewalk infrastructure, artistic improvement along with the lights to have sort of a cohesive uh, corridor for that type of activity. But I'm wondering if you've done that before.
yes, in fact, it's happening right now in Fort Worth, where I'm doing a big project. They're doing around this, it's an underpass project also. They are putting in new landscaping. They've put in bicycle paths. And the problem there is they discovered that the sewer leaks. They're going to have to tear up the roadway to replace the sewer, so they can't finish they need to go in and do some concrete correcting on some of the columns and stuff. So yeah, it's several times that's occurred. So
There's excuse me, there's a underground walkway at the Chicago, I think it's O'Hare Airport.
mhm.
Are you familiar with it?
Yes,
And there's lights as you walk along.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's
Yeah.
not mine.
No, it's not yours.
No, no.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bill. I want to do a couple of things. I do want to ask you some questions, but first, I also, wow, it's really fresh in my mind. You were just sharing with us the story of the firefighters. And we have a public sculpture, Fallen Firefighter by Betty Branch. It's well loved. It's currently in front of the Transportation Museum, and this coming year, it'll move to a new fire facility on Williamson Road. I want to acknowledge that 3 of our firefighters were injured today, and just how important our community is, the people who are keeping us safe. Just send some love out there for those members. Yeah. And just how important this work is, coming together around public art and the creation of it, coming together and experiencing it in the conversations it helps us have. I want to recognize a couple of things too as we add into this origin story. We have so many incredible partners I mentioned who are here in the room today. I want to mention the Stallings, Liz and Cameron. Cameron was just holding the microphone, but 2 of our artists in the community. I mentioned that Bill had said that he wanted to, well, maybe I didn't mention this. one of the first questions he asked was, well, are there students that I can work with? Are there emerging artists that I can work with? And that's one thing we really believe in. So it's been a lot of fun today riding around with Liz and Cameron, and hearing that engagement and that learning and that digging in together as well. So we fully expect, as we develop a project, and we are in that development stage right now. We're not quite there yet, but there are other partners in the room. The healing arts are represented, and we've got such a strong healing arts program in the community. I could, like my mind's limited, and I can see so many ways that we're going to engage people in this process. And I think frankly, I think it's going to blow you away, because I think we're ready for it. It's how we're built. It's how we've been working.